You're listening to the Better for America podcast, presented by AMAC, the Association of Mature American Citizens.
Hello, everyone. I'm Rebecca Weber. This is your AMAC podcast, Better for America. And today we have with us a perfectly suited guest, someone of depth, great breadth, and unusual discernment, and someone who really, for me, it's an honor and a privilege to speak with. It is Congressman Jody Hice. And Congressman Hice is a genuine leader, a patriot, and a former conservative radio host, and today is a principled congressman with a unique background. Having graduated from Asbury University, he earned his master's degree from Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary, a doctor of ministry from Luther Rice College and Seminary, and served as a pastor in 3 Georgia counties before becoming the U.S. Representative for Georgia's 10th District. I'd like for us to welcome Congressman Jody Hice. Congressman, welcome.
It's an honor to be with you, Rebecca. Thanks so much for having me. And listen, what an incredible work you're doing. My wife and I have been members of AMAC for a long, long time. I say a long, long time. I'm giving myself away, but we love everything you stand for. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you so much. And I really do think that your voice is more important today in Congress than perhaps any other point in history, because your faith, spiritual grounding, your education, is really something rather uncommon in Congress, and yet we face so many major issues, big issues today. I want to start with an issue that means a great deal to me and to many of our 2.4 million AMAC members, and that is the issue of abortion. We know that the Roe v. Wade decision is up for review by the Supreme Court, and we hear voices in the Senate and the House not only favoring abortion, but threatening to undermine the U.S. Supreme Court, that if the High Court decides that it's time to protect the life of children in the womb, what do you say to those who are attacking the Supreme Court for reviewing this decision and who threaten to undermine a potential decision to return the power of decision-making on life itself to the state level, which would permit states to protect the child's life?
Well, that's where it belongs in the first place. If we're going to deal with abortion, it's not in the Constitution. We only have 18 enumerated specifics in the Constitution that the federal government has jurisdiction over. Everything else is to be left to the states and to the people. And abortion is one of those. In fact, our Constitution, arguably, and our Declaration, very primarily, makes it clear that all of these founding documents were written both for us and our posterity, those who are yet unborn. And so I think there is a very strong argument that can be made even from that perspective, that if we're going to have any constitutional argument, then it is certainly going to be an argument for life. But beyond that kind of preamble type discussion, this is an issue that needs to be to the states. But what is so alarming to me, Rebecca, is the unwillingness for the radical left these days to even have a debate on these type of issues, be it abortion or be it the economy or the southern border or any of these things, or socialism. It is their way or the highway. They are going to demand that they get their way, or they're going to try to destroy everyone in their way. And in this case, it would be an attempt to destroy our judicial branch and to destroy the Supreme Court by packing it if they don't get their way. This is unprecedented thought, an unprecedented mentality to destroy the institution of the Supreme Court and our judicial branch as a whole if they don't get their way. But it's not just with the judicial branch. That attitude prevails in every aspect right now. If you do not agree with the radical left-wing socialists who are so vocal these days, literally they're out to destroy you.
Yeah, and our members are definitely pro-life folks that understand that, it is part of our freedoms, right? We are guaranteed life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness here in America. And we see that clearly, that government seems to dictate when a life becomes a life, and really saying that even right up until that 9th month of pregnancy. So here at AMAC, we are praying. We are keeping our thoughts and prayers with that the right decision is made It is such an important issue to our membership. So we appreciate your insight on that. And you are really just such a thoughtful leader on issues from government oversight to national security. And I think that you've got a good window on our past, our moral compass, and perspective that other people might really miss. So my question for you is, I do want to shift a little bit to another issue that I think is of great importance to your state and to the country and to all of our AMAC members. Your state is a major agricultural producer, and you're a strong advocate of all sources of energy being available to help farmers. And frankly, those will help all of us. Now, you favor that we use, all of our strengths, our fossil fuels, our renewables, and common sense. And what we're seeing as we approach winter, and I think it's going to be especially tough for many Americans this winter, we see energy prices are spiking because the Biden administration has really cut off major domestic sources of energy. And then they've pushed these policies that accelerate inflation and really are dodging and weaving, not taking responsibility for what they've done. In fact, in pending legislation, they really seem intent on punishing energy producers. And that punishes the average American. How do you see these issues?
Well, I mean, you've hit it right on the head, even in framing the question. We are watching an administration that the first week eliminated the Keystone Pipeline after having inherited, for the first time in decades, a country that was energy independent. We were experiencing independence under the Trump administration, and we were, as a result, gas prices were low. We were actually exporting energy to various places around the globe. That was inherited by the Biden administration, and immediately the Keystone Pipeline was shut down. And in fact, within months later, he allowed Russia to produce oil to Europe. Which, listen, this is literally giving billions of dollars to Putin, to our enemy, to our political and military enemy. We are now giving billions of dollars, and Europe is now dependent for blackmail upon Russian oil. None of this makes any sense whatsoever. And the answer that this administration has for all of these things is to throw more money into the economy to the tune of trillions and trillions of dollars, taking massive spending, implementing hundreds of new socialist programs, creating more inflation. We're watching, as you mentioned, gas prices are up 60% over what they were this time last year. Prices at the grocery store, I mean, go down the list. We're seeing wages of the American people are down because inflation is up. The value of the dollar is down, and inflation continues going up. And now with the massive spending, taxes likewise are going to be increased. That is why the American people soundly are rejecting the direction of this administration, and the approval ratings of President Biden are extremely low and tanking, it seems, more and more with each passing week.
Yeah, it really is tough. I think we need to be thinking harder about the impact of inflation, because this impacts everyone, and especially our older Americans, many of whom are really on fixed incomes. So this is really serious, and we recognize that Biden's pulling away from America's energy independence is something that was a poor decision, bad decision for all Americans. How do we get back? What should he be doing? What do we need to do in order to get? And I think I know the answer to this, but I'd like to hear what your thoughts are. How do we return to where we were?
Yeah, this is why one of the things that I continue to scratch my head, Rebecca, is so difficult to understand why some of the decisions are being made that are being made. Every single month since Biden has been in office, inflation has gotten worse. The value of the dollar has gotten worse. We're watching a methodical monthly progression away from the principles and the ideas that were so abundantly helping America and Americans to prosper. So, but it's all because of, frankly, a deep hatred for President Trump, that every policy that Trump had that was for the good of the country has been abandoned for the most part, whether we're talking the southern border or our military or our economy. From lowering taxes, lowering regulations, bringing businesses back to the country. Things that we were told never, ever could happen. Trump was able to do those. And immediately when Biden came in, he forsook all of those. So, it doesn't take rocket science to figure out that if what you are doing is not working, but what you forsook was working, just go back to what was working. And this is one of the things that I scratched my head over and over saying, is this a deliberate attempt to destroy our country? It does not take a great deal of discernment to recognize our current path is not prosperous. It is restrictive of our freedoms. It is weakening our presence around the world. And we need to return to the policies that were working. And yet I believe it's rooted in just such a deep hatred for Trump that they absolutely refuse to do anything that was working under President Trump. And that's a frightful scenario to consider if that in reality is what the situation is for the Democrats.
It is true when you say you're scratching your head and thinking, what the heck is going through their minds? And I feel that way too. So it's, I don't feel alone when, you shouldn't feel alone to feel this way. Our members feel the same. Those listening, I'm sure, feel the same. That leads to sort of almost an anger that I understand that people are feeling. They're saying, why would he be doing this? He's not giving any real common sense answers. And I think the proof is in the results, really, what we're seeing. People are going right to the gas pump and they're seeing it there. Going to the grocery store, they're seeing it there. We're seeing the jobs report. It's not good. There are just so many areas that I think the administration is not really doing their job. I appreciate your candor, your clarity. And I want to shift a little bit over to national security, because I see that you are a leader in this area. And I believe that you are involved in oversight. That includes oversight of national security. And AMAC leaders have recently spent time on the southwest border. Actually, I was down there myself with my team. We were seeking to understand how serious a problem illegal immigration really is. The drug and human trafficking, it really exists. And so we also closely track national security issues around the world because they have a direct impact here on America and on average Americans, from Afghanistan to China. And we see that the Biden administration seems to be making one mistake after the other. So I was wondering if you could help us for a moment to understand your perspective on these big issues. How important is it in the near future that we secure our southwestern border? I'll start there.
Yeah, it can't be overemphasized, the importance of this. I have been to all 9 sectors on the southern border. I have visited with homeowners, landowners, ranch owners. I've been with the Border Patrol. I've seen all our facilities from every sector that we have, and they're all alike right now. It's absolutely a disaster. It's frightening. It is inexcusable why our southern borders are open as they are right now. The last time in Yuma, Arizona, as we're watching right now on television, they are at 1,000% capacity. A facility right now that's supposed to have just a random number, 100 people, overcrowded with 1,000 people who are there. It is unmanageable. And it's not just there. The last time I was in Yuma a few months ago, the very place I was standing, the day before, they captured 4 Iranians coming across that particular sector. They told us that this year alone, just in that one sector, over 160 different countries have been represented illegally crossing into this country. We don't know who these people are. We don't know why they're coming. We don't know what their intentions are, but they are coming by the thousands, month after month after month. We're going to go over 2 million new people crossing our border by the end of this year. And that's just the people that we know have come across our borders. It's the human trafficking, the drug smuggling, the criminals that are coming across the border, massive disease, and yet we are watching ourselves being restricted because of COVID, and yet our borders are wide open. estimates I've heard ranging from 25 to 30% of the individuals coming across the border are infected, be it with COVID or some other contagious disease, and they're getting a total pass. And then they're being shipped all across the country. It's like, and I hate to put it this way, but if you could think up a scheme to be destructive to our country, could you think up a better scheme than what we are watching being played out? Why is there not a concern, a care? Why is it that President Biden has not been to the southern border? Why is it that Vice President Harris has not been to the southern border? She went close, but she didn't go there. And she's supposedly the czar. She's the one supposedly in charge of making sure that our southern White House, from the administration's perspective, she is the one who's supposed to, and yet she hasn't even gone. What about Homeland Security? What is Mayorkas doing? Why? You have to scratch your head and saying, why are we doing this? And then you add a second layer to that with the disaster that took place in Afghanistan, the national security risks that took place there that have ensued since we left there, and the tens of thousands of refugees who have been brought here. Just yesterday, I had another conversation with a top level general who said these people, so many of them are unvetted. We have no idea who they are. And so you've got both the southern border and from internationally through the Afghanistan disaster, we have a major national security risk that is underway. And at the same time, we're watching countries like China and Russia and North Korea take advantage of the weak leadership that we currently have now. So it's an extremely serious situation that the American people and your AMAC listeners need to be aware of, both to pray about and to contact their representatives and demand answers and demand policies that will help correct the disastrous decisions that have been and that continue to be made.
You know, I can't help but think that there's some sort of spiritual warfare occurring here in our government, because it really doesn't make sense. We were down at the border, and we're compassionate people. I love the idea of people moving to America. You know, this is the land of the free, the home of the brave. We want people to live in America. And we love that people, I love the idea of the American dream. You know, that's what makes this country so great. And when you see what the administration is allowing to happen, you can't think that if they really cared about bringing people over, and they really meant it when they said, we've got to let these poor souls get into our country. If that was where their heart really was at, and it was really a true statement that they just, then they would come up with a way to do it that did not put Americans at severe risk, that didn't take hundreds of thousands of lives because of overdoses of drugs, the fentanyl that we're seeing coming over. They wouldn't turn a blind eye to the human trafficking, these young girls that are being raped, that are taken advantage of, the cartels that own the people who, once they come to the States and they disperse across the 50 states, they owe this cartel for getting them here in the first place. And, you know, these are the stories that we don't hear about in mainstream media. And I say to myself, something demonic is happening here. You know, I was speaking to a friend of mine just last evening. He said something really interesting, and it really sat with me. He said to me, Rebecca, people don't just wake up and sin. It's not the way the devil works. He said, foolishness sets in first, and we buy into our foolishness, you know, that is what leads to sin. And when I think about the current administration, they're a bunch of fools. And I don't say that to be mean, but I think to myself, how foolish could you be to turn a blind eye to a problem that's getting worse, that's hurting Americans? We've got to pray. And so I'm glad that you mentioned that, because that is something that I believe in, the power of prayer. And I do believe that that we can prayerfully see good things come out of this. We live, I think, in such unusually unsettled times right now. And I think that more attention needs to be given to the border and to our national security here at home. So, and, you know, when we, especially, you know, we just celebrated the anniversary of the attack on Pearl Harbor, or honor that day. I don't know if we celebrate it, but you know what I'm saying, bad choice of words. But when we look back at that terrible attack on Pearl Harbor, we should be working harder to deter those who would do America harm, not ignore the history of our past and pretend that we don't see the terrible things that are happening with us today. So I agree with you there.
Question about that.
Please
Yeah, no
comment.
question. And just to respond, I could not agree. The number one thing that I request of people, and I speak to a lot of groups, the number one thing that I request of people when they say, what do we need to do? It's pray. There is no doubt in my mind that the issues we're facing today are rooted in a spiritual problem in this country. It is spiritual warfare. It's a spiritual problem. And we cannot, I'm convinced, we cannot fix these problems with another piece of legislation. We can't fix these problems by throwing more money at it. We need the good hand of God right now, helping us as a nation to come through these turbulent and difficult times. It is a problem with the heart, and you cannot fix that with another bill or by throwing more money at it. It's a heart condition, and we need people praying like we have never prayed. And I'm encouraged, Rebecca, to be honest with this. There's no question more people are praying for this country than have ever prayed that I've ever seen, at least in my lifetime. And I'm extremely encouraged. I believe that that God is at work, and that keeps my faith up and keeps my hope up. And I believe that good things are going to happen. But God shows off the most when it's the darkest. And we've got some serious problems right now, but we are seeing more prayer and people standing up and engaging our problems in a proper way. And I believe we're going to see some good answers as we continue doing so.
Yeah, that is really encouraging. And I agree with you. And I'm seeing it too myself. I'm hearing more and more people that are vocal about the fact that we do need to pray. It is so important. And our founding fathers, I think they did a lot of that praying themselves. And that is what helped make this country so great. Brave leadership too. We need courageous men and women to lead. And I pray that in the 2022 elections that we will see some really good people get elected into office. I do want to pivot for a moment from national security to personal security. And I hate that our topics, I keep going to what's so wrong in the country, but I can't ignore the fact that even as we're working to secure our border and protect against foreign adversaries, that we're seeing such a shocking jump in crime across the country, especially in places that have without any, really, they haven't cut their police budgets maybe, and we're seeing still crime increase. So many other areas where police have been, cut. We've seen the police forces so demoralized. I just woke up this morning to see that the Fox Christmas tree that Fox News has outside their studio was lit up in flames, and this guy that did it, he was let free overnight. So my question is twofold. First, should we be cutting police budgets and dishonoring those people who really work for us and risk their lives each and every day? And the second question would be, how do we get back to common sense and support our law enforcement?
Yeah, listen, you only defund the police if you want more crime. It does not take much to understand that where there is laws and order, you must have law enforcement to maintain that law and order. And in the absence of law enforcement, there will be the absence of law and order. And so, to my knowledge, at least in the research I've done, and I'm not done to every city, but wherever major cities have cut or defunded the police, their crime right now and violent crime skyrocketing, from carjackings to violent crimes, criminal activity. I mean, now we're watching the shoplifters breaking in and grabbing and go with, and somehow here comes the mayor of Chicago blaming the store owners for all of that. When they cut, oh yeah, she said the store owners need to do a better job defending their stores.
We should play that clip. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to have my guys play that clip right here, because our listeners ought to see what this Mayor Lightfoot said about it being the problem of the business owners. We'll go ahead and play that.
but we've also got to push retailers. Some of the retailers downtown in Michigan Avenue, I will tell you, I'm disappointed that they're not doing more to take safety and make it a priority. For example, we still have retailers that won't institute plans like having security officers in their stores, making sure that they've got cameras that are actually operational, locking up their merchandise at night, chaining high-end bags. These purses seem to be something that is attracting a lot of attention on these organized retail theft units. So we've set up a lot of tactics and measures to make sure that we're being as responsive as possible, including having a lot of resources in retail corridors all across the city, not just in the downtown area, but we need some of these retailers to also step up and be partners with us in this work.
Yeah, and so how do you anticipate any other response if you're going to not penalize people who are committing crimes and at the same time defund those who are there to enforce law and order? It's the perfect ingredient for a disastrous society. And that's what we're seeing all across the country. And I think the way we get back to this, there has to be law and order, which means there has to be law enforcement, respect for law enforcement. But we also have to get back to traditional family values. Listen, all of this goes back to the condition of the family, where we have rampant divorce. We've got children that are undisciplined that are growing up. We've got problems with our educational system, with respecting authority and individuals, the breakdown of the family in so many different ways. Children need to be raised in families with moms and dads, with love and respect, with going to church, with understanding that God is God, that we'll stand before him one day. I mean, there's a whole host of things that we have gotten away from as a country. It's not just as serious of a problem as it is defunding the police. I mean, that's a massive wrong policy, and the results we're watching. But it goes far along. It's a family problem as well as a societal problem and leadership problem. And we've got to recognize that and come back to some of these things. The statistics are very clear that when children grow up in what used to be a traditional family with mom and dad, a loving environment, that they were in school, they got educated, they were able to have economic opportunities available. You didn't have these types of problems that we're seeing today. But the more we get away from those fundamentals, the more problems that are more and more evident that we all see, and problems that we all hate, that we want to get away from.
Yeah. Now, you are a rock solid defender of the Second Amendment. And I want to ask you to help educate our listeners when they're talking to their friends and family, their neighbors, or others who are on the other side, who are on the left, who think that we have a problem, that the problem with relating to crime is connected to our Second Amendment. Therefore, we need to get rid of our Second Amendment or put more laws in place that limit the rights of individual Americans to own guns. How do you, can you help educate our listeners so that they can understand what the purpose of the Second Amendment, why it was ever put there in the first place, and why it is so important?
Yeah, look, the Second Amendment is there not for hunting and outdoorsmen, as much as that is. And I'm an outdoorsman myself, and I love getting out and going hunting and all that sort of stuff. But that is not the primary purpose of the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment comes after the First Amendment. The First Amendment says that we have a right to free speech and to our faith and to all these kinds of things. And then comes the Second Amendment that basically says, and we will have the First Amendment because we have the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment is there to ensure that we, the people, have the right to the liberties that are promised us in our Constitution. So our founders very wisely gave the right to keep and bear arms, and for that not to be infringed upon, because they understood the right of the people to stand for and defend themselves and their liberties is what will be a major deterrent from those liberties ever being taken away from us. God forbid that it ever comes to that point, that the Second Amendment has to be used in that kind of way, but that's what the founders gave us. The Second Amendment is there so that the people have a right to defend themselves against tyranny, to defend themselves against a government that would want to come in and intrude upon their lives in an unconstitutional way. So, and understand too, it's not guns that are responsible for crimes. It's individuals who use guns. Guns are no more the fault of crime any more than a fork and a spoon is the fault for obesity in our country. Those are just, they're objects in and of themselves that can be used or abused by people, but freedom comes with certain risks, and we need to understand that. But the Second Amendment is one of those things that is there to ensure not only our personal safety and our ability to defend ourselves and our families, but it is ultimately a defense against tyrannical government taking undue control over this country. And like I said, God forbid that ever have to be used in that way, but that's why the founders gave it to us.
Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate the way that you said that. And it's important that we all understand that and we're equipped with the truth so that we can share that statement, those truths about the importance of the Second Amendment and why it's important. So I really appreciate that. I thank you for that. I do want to ask you a broad question in closing, since you will have far more insight, I think, than many of us who are at the outer rim of the process. But as a member of the Oversight Committee, how do we get a handle on the massive spending, the concentration of power, the rise of socialism, the lack of moral compass and accountability at the federal level, but especially this massive spending? We've seen this $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill. We hear about the Build Back Better bill. We're hearing numbers, trillions. That's a number so big with so many zeros. I don't think people fully understand what it means for our nation to be in $30 trillion of debt. Help us understand what we need to do to get a handle on this massive spending and the concentration of power that we're seeing.
Yeah, listen, we are watching the bankrupting of our country if we can continue on the current path that we are on. We used to talk with shock in terms of millions of dollars and billions. But now Washington throws around trillions as though it's nothing. And what's disturbing to me, Rebecca, that goes beyond, not beyond, just part of the disturbing nature of this whole path that we are currently on, is not only are we spending trillions of dollars in single bills that are being voted on, but we don't even have time to read the bill. I mean, we just this past week had a 2,100-page bill, the NDAA, that came down the pipe only hours before we were voting on it. And it is we used to all laugh at Nancy Pelosi's comment that we've got to pass this bill to find out what's in it. But we are living in a political era where that becomes a reality almost on a weekly basis. There is no way to read these bills of hundreds and thousands of pages in a matter of just a few hours. And so we have these massive spending bills combined with very little time to even know what's in it when it comes to the floor for a vote. So I've been a proud member since being in Congress to be a part of the Oversight Committee. I'm the ranking member of the Gov Ops, the Government Operations Subcommittee of Oversight. And I love that committee. It does grant us great authority wherever in any government agency or department where there are things like waste or fraud, abuse, scandals. It's a pretty busy committee, as you can well imagine, but we do have oversight of those things. Unfortunately, elections have consequences, and currently the majority party always has the say when it comes to what kinds of things are we going to exercise oversight over? What are we going to dive into? And I can tell you, as a part of the Republican Party, the minority right now, we have written letters till we're blue in the face. We have called for special hearings on this issue or that issue, trying to offer authentic oversight of some very egregious acts in various departments of our government. And we have been denied the right to proceed with those hearings. So We have just got to continue. It goes from one election to the next. I believe, given much of what we have discussed in our time together here today, that the American people are rejecting the current administration, the policies of the Democratic Party as a whole. They don't want socialism. They don't want government breathing down their neck, making all their decisions for them. They don't want their liberties taken away due to something like COVID. It's up to every person to make those decisions between themselves, their families, their doctors, not the government telling them what to do. The same with businesses, our border, our military, on and on and on. And the American people, I believe, are going to soundly reject the socialist agenda and the massive government expansion and restrictions of our freedoms that the current path is on. If that happens, if I'm right, and there is a mass shifting of direction with the next election, then every committee, including oversight, will have the authority then with the leadership of the Republican leadership to pursue what we ought to indeed be exercising oversight on. But elections have consequences, and as much as you hate to admit that, it's not hiding behind anything. It's a reality. We at the end of the day, the majority party does whatever the majority wants to do. We try to throw sand in the gears to slow it down, and in whatever way we can to stop it. But at the end of the day, the majority in the House, at least, does whatever they want to do. And that is the issue with what do we do to turn this thing around? It comes down ultimately to the ballot box.
That's right. And that's one of the reasons why we do this podcast is we want to educate and inform our listeners, keep them up to date on what's really happening, give them the talking points that they need so that they are, armed with the knowledge. But we will continue to work here at AMAC to restore limited government and to ensure fidelity to the Bill of Rights, respect for rule of law. And we really need to keep our federal government accountable. So I want to thank you so much for being a great defender, an amazing patriot. Congressman, your leadership in Washington is really a wonderful, puts a bright spot at this time of year, really at every time of year, but we're very grateful for you.
Well, Rebecca, it's my honor to be with you today. Thanks for your leadership and all you do and the amazing work of AMAC and the incredible members. I'm honored, my wife and I, to be closely associated with what you do.
And we are honored to have you as an AMAC member. And Congressman, I think America is so well served by many, even if we are, battling to regain control over our traditional values and restore moral compass and preserve the rights that we all believe to be central to our republic into the future. So again, thank you so much on behalf of our 2.4 million members and our members and those listening. We've got to pray. I can't encourage it enough. Be sure to pray because this country is a beautiful country. We've got freedoms for a reason. Congressman, you have been a voice of leadership, and AMAC really appreciates patriots, those of principle. And we know that this is a hard time. It sometimes is very, very hard to keep our voices lifted against in a storm, right? But we're going to continue to fight the good fight, be on the right side of history, and defend our beautiful freedom. So I do hope to have you back with us soon on more topics, Congressman.
Would love to do it. In the meantime, keep the torch ablaze. God bless you.
God bless you too. And I want to thank AMAC members and everyone listening. Thank you for tuning in today. And if you haven't downloaded the AMAC News app, please go ahead and do so. Watch and listen to today's podcast. Plus, you can track breaking news right there from the AMAC News app on your smartphone. Please make sure to hit that subscribe button, follow, like, and share wherever you are on social media. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Until next time, I'm Rebecca Weber. This is your podcast, Better for America. Thank you for being here. God bless you and have a great day, everyone.
Thank you for listening to the Better for America podcast. To learn more about AMAC and all it has to offer, visit us at www.amac.us.